After 28 years in prison, elderly woman finally returns home. But what awaits her changes everything. Mrs. Dorothy Mitchell adjusted the purple blouse she had bought with the little money she received upon leaving the penitentiary. At 72 years old, after nearly 3 decades away from home, she walked along the dirt road she knew by heart, but which now seemed strange and different. That's when she saw the man in a dark suit standing in front of what remained of her old house. The wooden structure that was once the family's pride was now in ruins, with broken windows and a partially collapsed roof. The stranger watched her with a serious expression, holding a brown leather briefcase in his hands. "Are you Dorothy Mitchell?" he asked, stepping down from the porch steps which creaked under his feet. "That's me," she replied, feeling her heart race. After so long, any conversation with strangers still made her nervous. "My name is Dr. Bradley Harrison. I'm a lawyer. I need to speak with you about this property." He opened the briefcase and took out some papers. "Unfortunately, I have bad news." Dorothy felt her legs trembling. She had dreamed so much of this moment, imagining what it would be like to set foot again on the land where she was born and raised. She never imagined she would find a lawyer waiting with legal problems. "What kind of bad news?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "The property has accumulated tax and fee debts from the last 20 years. The amount has already exceeded $200,000. If it's not paid off in 2 weeks, everything will be auctioned," explained Dr. Bradley, extending the documents to her. Dorothy looked at the papers without being able to fully process the information. How was this possible? Before she was imprisoned, the property was up to date on all obligations. Her husband, Robert, had always been very careful with these matters. "But how did this happen? Where is my daughter? Didn't she take care of anything?" The questions came out in sequence, reflecting years of anxiety and worry. "According to records, your daughter, Jennifer, sold all the furniture and belongings shortly after your imprisonment. She claimed urgent financial need." Dr. Bradley hesitated before continuing. "She also renounced any responsibility for the property at that time." The world seemed to spin around Dorothy. Jennifer was only 20 years old when she was imprisoned. She had imagined her daughter would take care of everything, waiting for her return. The reality was far more painful than anything she had experienced in prison. "May I go inside the house?" she asked, needing to lean on the fence post. "Of course, technically it's still your property for 2 more weeks," said the lawyer, putting the papers away. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the silence was deafening. There was no furniture, curtains, or any sign that this place had once been a home. Just peeling walls and the smell of mold. Dorothy walked through the living room where she used to receive visitors, the kitchen where she prepared family meals, the hallway that led to the bedrooms. "Mrs. Dorothy, there's one more thing I need to mention." Dr. Bradley followed her through the house. "Someone has expressed interest in buying the property. They made an offer well above market value." "Who?" She stopped walking. "Prefers to remain anonymous for now, but is willing to pay $300,000 in cash. It would be enough to pay off the debts and still leave a reasonable amount for you," explained the lawyer. $300,000 for that deteriorated property seemed strange. The farm held immense sentimental value for Dorothy, but from a financial standpoint, it wasn't worth even half that. Why would anyone pay so much for land that needed so much work to be restored? Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out. Now, continuing. "I need time to think," said Dorothy, continuing her walk through the house. "I understand perfectly, but remember we only have 2 weeks. Dr. Bradley looked at his watch. "I'll leave my card. Whatever decision you make, let me know." After the lawyer left, Dorothy was alone in her old house. She climbed the creaking stairs leading to the 2nd floor where the bedrooms were. The room she shared with Robert was empty. Only marks on the floor showed where the double bed had been. Jennifer's room was also completely stripped bare. That's when she remembered the attic. Robert always kept important things up there. With difficulty, she managed to open the hatch and climb the wooden ladder. The attic was dark and dusty, but in the farthest corner was an old trunk she recognized immediately. It was the Mitchell family trunk, where Dorothy's grandmother kept important documents and mementos. She managed to drag it under the attic's small window to get more light. When she opened it, she found old photographs, birth and marriage certificates, and papers she hadn't seen in decades. At the bottom of the trunk, wrapped in a yellowed linen cloth, was a letter. The handwriting was Robert's. Dorothy felt her heart race as she recognized her husband's penmanship. The letter was dated 3 days before her arrest. "My dear Dorothy, if you're reading this, something terrible has happened to me or to our family. There is a secret I've protected for so long, but now I need to leave a record so you know the truth. At the bank branch where you worked, I discovered irregularities involving very influential people in the region. I tried to protect you by not telling you anything, but I fear our family is in danger. The documents that prove everything are kept in a safe place. The key is where we always kept our most precious treasures. If anything happens to me, look for Eugene Parker. He knows where to find the evidence. I love you forever, Robert." Dorothy read the letter 3 times, trying to understand Robert's words. Irregularities at the bank branch? Influential people? She had been accused precisely of financial irregularities at the bank, where she had worked as a teller for over 15 years. Throughout the entire legal process, she had always maintained her innocence. She couldn't understand how fraudulent transactions had been carried out with her password and signature. The defense attorney wasn't competent enough, the evidence seemed irrefutable, and she ended up sentenced to 30 years in prison. The mention of the name Eugene Parker brought back confused memories. She vaguely remembered a man by that name who worked as an accountant for several establishments in town. Robert knew him well. They sometimes talked business when they met in the town square. The key is where we always kept our most precious treasures. What place could that be? Dorothy tried to remember where she and Robert used to hide important things. There was the small safe in the bedroom, but Jennifer had certainly taken it along with the other belongings. Then she remembered the barn. Robert always said the barn was the heart of the property, where they kept the most valuable things on the farm. There was a loose floorboard, disguised among the others, where he hid money for emergencies. Dorothy climbed down from the attic with difficulty, tucking the letter into her blouse pocket. She walked to the back of the house where the barn stood. To her surprise, it was no longer there. Only marks on the ground showed where the wooden structure had been. She wondered when the barn had been demolished and why. Robert had always been very careful with that construction, performing regular maintenance and saying it was important for the farm's operation. Why would someone have demolished it? The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in golden and orange hues. Dorothy needed to find a place to spend the night. She had no money for a hotel, and the house was in poor condition to be lived in. She remembered Mrs. Patricia, a neighbor who had always been a friend to the family. Her house was about 2 kilometers away. Dorothy decided to walk there, hoping the old neighbor would have a kind heart and offer at least a roof for the first night. The walk down the dirt road brought back memories of her youth, when she traveled that same path every day to go to school. The landscape had changed. Some new houses had been built, others were abandoned. The region seemed less prosperous than when she left. When she arrived at Mrs. Patricia's house, she found a woman approximately her age, with graying hair and a face marked by time. Patricia recognized her immediately, but her expression was not one of joy as Dorothy had hoped. "Dorothy Mitchell," said Patricia, showing no emotion. "I heard you had left." "Hi, Patricia. I know it's been a long time, but I need help. I have nowhere to stay tonight," explained Dorothy, feeling embarrassed. "Look, Dorothy, I won't lie to you. People here still talk a lot about what happened. My family doesn't want trouble." Patricia looked around as if she were being watched. "Patricia, we were friends. You know I would never do the things they accused me of." Dorothy tried to appeal to the history they shared. "Dorothy, I don't know what to believe anymore. It's been many years, many different stories. You'd better seek help in town." Patricia began to close the door. "Please, just one night. I promise I'll leave early tomorrow," insisted Dorothy. Patricia hesitated for a few seconds before sighing deeply. "There's a small room in the back where we keep tools. It's clean, has an old bed. But just one night. Understand?" she finally said. "Thank you so much, Patricia. I won't forget your kindness." Dorothy felt relief at having a place to sleep. The small back room was simple but cozy. There was a single bed with clean sheets, a wooden chair, and a small window overlooking the backyard. Dorothy lay down fully dressed, physically and emotionally exhausted. Before sleeping, she took Robert's letter from her pocket and read it once more. She tried to understand what he meant by irregularities involving very influential people. During the years in prison, she had always wondered who had really committed the crimes for which she was convicted. At the bank where she worked, there were many important clients from the region. Wealthy farmers, influential merchants, even local politicians kept accounts there. Was it possible that one of those people had used her identity to carry out fraudulent transactions? Dorothy remembered the day of her arrest. She had arrived at work as usual, greeted her colleagues, began serving customers. Around 10 in the morning, 2 detectives entered the agency and went straight to her counter. The charges seemed absurd: embezzlement, document forgery, money laundering. During the months of the trial, she tried to remember anything strange that had happened at the bank. Was there any client who always asked to be served specifically by her? Someone who showed unusual knowledge about internal procedures? Then she remembered Mr. Harold Thompson, a very wealthy farmer who always made large, complex transactions. He was polite and kind, but there was something in his eyes that had always made her uncomfortable. Harold always asked to be assisted by her, saying he trusted her work. Could it be possible that Harold was involved in the irregularities mentioned by Robert? Dorothy decided that the next day she would try to find out more about what happened to the people she knew before her imprisonment. The next morning, Patricia knocked on the door of the small room very early. "Dorothy, I made some breakfast. Have something to eat before you leave," she said in a gentler tone than the night before. During breakfast, Patricia shared some news from the region. Many families had moved away, some properties were sold, others abandoned. The local economy wasn't doing well. Many young people had left in search of opportunities in the big cities. "And what happened to the Thompson family?" asked Dorothy, trying to sound casual. "Ah, the Thompsons." Patricia made a strange expression. "Harold passed away about 10 years ago. They say it was heart problems. The children sold the farm and moved to the state capital." "Why do you ask?" "Just curiosity." "He was a client at the bank where I worked," replied Dorothy. "Yeah, that whole bank story was talked about a lot around here. A lot of people lost money. Everyone was outraged," commented Patricia, observing Dorothy's reaction. "What story? I never knew about any other losses besides the ones they accused me of causing." Dorothy felt her heart race. Patricia seemed to realize she had said something she shouldn't have. "Ah, it was just rumors. You know how small towns are. People talk a lot." She tried to downplay it. "Patricia, please tell me what you know. It could be important for me," insisted Dorothy. "Look, Dorothy, what I heard was that after your arrest, they discovered there was much more money involved than they said in the trial. Some important families lost large sums, but it seems they preferred not to publicize it to avoid drawing attention," Patricia explained reluctantly. "This information changed everything. If there were more victims and more money involved, it meant the crime was much bigger than what she was accused of committing. How could a simple bank teller have access to such large sums?" "Do you know which families were affected?" asked Dorothy. "I can't say names, Dorothy. I've already said more than I should. You'd better leave the past behind and think about the future." Patricia stood up, indicating the conversation was over. Dorothy thanked her for the hospitality and headed toward town. She needed to find more concrete information about the crime she was convicted of. She also needed to locate Eugene Parker, the man mentioned in Robert's letter. The town of St. Benedict Fields had grown in the last 20 years, but it still maintained its small-town feel. Dorothy walked through the main streets, observing the changes. Many stores were different, some new buildings had appeared, but the central square was still the heart of the town. She decided to start her search at the bank branch where she used to work. The building still existed, but now it housed a clothing store. The current owner, a middle-aged woman, said the bank had closed over 15 years ago. "A lot of trouble happened at that bank," said the shopkeeper. "After that whole story, people lost confidence. The bank was sold, then it closed. Such a shame. It was a respected institution." Dorothy asked if she remembered any former bank employees who still lived in town. "There's Linda. She was the manager back then. She now works at the new bank that opened on the back street. But I don't know if she'll want to talk about that time. You know how it is, suggested the shopkeeper. Dorothy found Linda Patterson working as a supervisor at the new bank. She was a few years younger than Dorothy, always a dedicated and competent employee. When she saw Dorothy enter the bank, Linda seemed surprised and a little uncomfortable. "Dorothy, wow, it's been so long," said Linda, trying to maintain her professional composure. "Hi, Linda. I was wondering if we could speak in private. It's important," asked Dorothy. Linda hesitated, looked at her colleagues around her, and finally agreed. They went to an empty meeting room. "Dorothy, I can imagine why you're here, but I need to say I can't talk much about that time. It was very traumatic for all of us," said Linda, showing nervousness. "Linda, I need to understand what really happened. I spent 28 years in prison for crimes I didn't commit. Now I've discovered there might be much more to this story," explained Dorothy, taking Robert's letter from her pocket. Linda read the letter and her face paled. "Where did you find this?" she asked, her voice trembling. "In the attic of my house. Robert wrote it just a few days before I was arrested," replied Dorothy. "Dorothy, you don't understand the danger you might be in. There are very powerful people involved in this story." Linda looked at the door as if fearing being overheard. "What people? Linda, please help me. I need the truth," begged Dorothy. Linda was silent for a few minutes, seeming to wrestle with a difficult decision. "I'll tell you what I know, but promise you'll never say it was me who told you," whispered Linda. "I promise," said Dorothy, holding her former colleague's hands. "After your arrest, inconsistencies started appearing in the bank's records. Transactions that didn't match normal procedures, movements that seemed to have been made outside of business hours," Linda began. "And what did they do with that information?" "At first, the board said they would investigate, but after a few weeks the order came to stop any investigation and destroy the problematic records. They said it was to protect the bank's reputation," Linda continued. "Who gave that order?" "The director himself, Dr. Charles Bradford. But he was clearly getting pressure from outside. There were meetings with people I had never seen before, men in suits who arrived in expensive cars," explained Linda. Dorothy absorbed this information, trying to connect the pieces. Dr. Charles Bradford was the bank director at the time of her arrest. During the trial, he testified against her, saying there were signs she was involved in suspicious activities. "Linda, do you remember anything strange involving Harold Thompson?" asked Dorothy. "Harold Thompson," Linda thought for a few seconds. "Yes, I remember. He always made very large transactions, but there was something odd. Sometimes he would arrive after business hours, but he could still get in. He said he had special authorization from the director." "And do you believe those transactions were legitimate?" "At the time, I thought so. After all, he was a very important client. But later, when the investigation started, I realized many of his movements coincided with the irregularities that appeared," admitted Linda. "Do you still have any documentation from that time?" "No, Dorothy. Everything was destroyed by order of the board. But there is one person who might be able to help you." Linda lowered her voice even further. "Who?" "Eugene Parker. He was an accountant for several important clients, including Harold Thompson. At the time of your arrest, he tried to talk to the police, said he had important information, but no one wanted to listen," revealed Linda. Finally, a concrete lead about Eugene Parker. Dorothy felt a mix of hope and anxiety. "Where can I find him?" "Eugene still lives in town, but after all that mess, he became very reclusive. He lives alone in a small house on Acacia Street, number 47. "But Dorothy, be careful. If he really knows something important, it could be dangerous for both of you," warned Linda. Dorothy thanked her for the information and headed to Acacia Street. Number 47 was a simple, well-kept house with a small garden in front. She took a deep breath before knocking on the door. A man of about 70 answered. He was thin, wore glasses, and had a cautious expression. "Good afternoon. Are you Eugene Parker?" asked Dorothy. "Who's asking?" he replied, not opening the door fully. "My name is Dorothy Mitchell. I believe you knew my husband, Robert Mitchell." She showed him the letter. Eugene read the name on the envelope and his face completely changed. "Come in, quickly," he said, pulling her inside and closing the door immediately. Eugene's house was tidy and clean, with old but well-cared-for furniture. He led her to the living room and asked her to sit down. Dorothy Mitchell. "I've been waiting for this moment for almost 30 years, said Eugene, emotion in his voice. "You know the story?" she asked. "I know much more than you can imagine. Robert came to see me just a few days before you were arrested. He had discovered a very dangerous scheme and needed my help to gather evidence," explained Eugene. "What kind of scheme?" "Large-scale money laundering involving local politicians, major landowners, and even people from other states. The bank where you worked was just one of the operation's points," revealed Eugene. Dorothy felt as if the floor was disappearing beneath her feet. The magnitude of what Eugene was describing was far greater than anything she could have imagined. "And how did my husband discover all this?" "Robert was making some deliveries for the city hall at the time, you remember. During one of those deliveries, he saw documents he wasn't supposed to see. Conversations about moving large sums, bank account names, specific dates," explained Eugene. "Why didn't he go directly to the police?" "Because he discovered some police officers were also involved. Robert was a simple man, but he wasn't a fool. He knew he needed to gather solid evidence before reporting anything," said Eugene. "And did you manage to gather that evidence?" "Yes, we did. Robert brought documents, I photographed others. We managed to record some conversations. We had enough evidence to expose the entire operation." Eugene stood up and went to a cabinet. "Where is that evidence now?" "Kept in a safe place for almost 30 years. Eugene returned with a small key in his hands. "Robert gave me this key a few days before he disappeared." Dorothy took the key and recognized it immediately. It was identical to the key she and Robert used to lock the trunk where they kept important documents. "Robert didn't disappear, Eugene. He passed away from a heart attack a few months after my arrest," she corrected him. "Dorothy, I'm so sorry to be the one to tell you this, but Robert did not have a heart attack," said Eugene, his expression grave. "What do you mean?" "Robert was poisoned." "I have proof of that too," revealed Eugene. Dorothy's world collapsed once again. Robert had been murdered because of the evidence he discovered, and she had spent 28 years in prison believing he had died of natural causes. "Why did you never go to the police? Why didn't you try to help me?" she asked, tears in her eyes. "Dorothy, I tried. Right after your arrest, I went to the detective in charge of the case. I explained I had evidence of your innocence. He told me to forget the whole story if I wanted to stay alive." Eugene sat down beside her. "And then?" "Then I received threats, anonymous phone calls, strange cars driving past my house, people following me on the street. I realized that if I insisted I would end up like Robert," admitted Eugene. Dorothy understood that Eugene had also been a victim of this situation. He tried to do the right thing, but was silenced by the same people who destroyed her family. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we're just starting out, now continuing. "Eugene, where are the evidence kept?" asked Dorothy. "In a safe deposit box at a bank in the capital. Robert rented the box using a fake name, and I'm the only one who has access," he explained. "Can we retrieve that evidence now?" "Yes, we can, but first I need to warn you about something important." Eugene became serious. "The people involved in this scheme are still alive and still powerful. If they find out you're investigating, they might try to silence you too." "I have nothing left to lose, Eugene. I lost 28 years of my life. My husband was murdered. My daughter abandoned me. I need the truth, no matter the risk," said Dorothy with determination. "Then let's go get the evidence together, but we have to be very careful," agreed Eugene. They arranged to leave for the capital the next morning. Eugene offered the living room sofa for Dorothy to sleep on, as it wasn't safe for her to walk around the city alone. During the night, Dorothy couldn't sleep. She kept thinking about Robert, about how brave he was trying to protect her and uncover the truth. She also thought about Jennifer, her daughter, who probably knew nothing about the true circumstances of her mother's imprisonment. The next morning, Eugene and Dorothy took the bus to the capital. During the 3-hour trip, he told more details about the scheme Robert had uncovered. The operation was run by a group of 5 people. Harold Thompson was just one of them, responsible for laundering the money through agricultural activities, explained Eugene. "Who were the others?" "Dr. Charles Bradford, the bank director, Colonel Benedict Adams, an influential politician, Dr. Albert Henderson, who was the judge at the time, and one person who coordinated everything, but whose identity we never discovered, said Eugene. A judge was involved? Dorothy was shocked. Yes, and unfortunately he was the one responsible for speeding up your trial and ensuring your conviction. He had a personal interest in you being silenced quickly, revealed Eugene. Dorothy remembered the trial. Dr. Albert Henderson did indeed seem impatient with the defense, cut off several of her lawyer's arguments, and appeared convinced of her guilt from the start. Arriving in the capital, Eugene took her to a bank in the city center. He presented the necessary documents, and they were led to the safe deposit box area. With trembling hands, Eugene inserted the key Robert had given him. Inside the box were several organized folders, photographs, cassette tapes, and various documents. Dorothy recognized Robert's handwriting on some notes. "Dorothy, here is everything your husband managed to gather. Enough evidence to clear your name and incriminate the real culprits," said Eugene, removing the folders from the box. They took the material to a nearby hotel and spent hours examining each document. The evidence was impressive. Records of fake transactions, recordings of incriminating conversations, photographs of confidential documents. Dorothy discovered that her identity had been used to create fake bank accounts in her name. Someone had forged her signature hundreds of times to authorize million-dollar transactions. The scheme was sophisticated and well-planned. "Eugene, how are we going to use this evidence? If we present it to the local authorities, they might try to silence us like they did with Robert," said Dorothy. "We have to be strategic. Let's look for a lawyer in the capital, someone who has no connections to the people involved," suggested Eugene. Through the hotel, they got a referral to a law firm specializing in criminal review cases. Dr. Paul Henry Carter received Dorothy and Eugene in his office the following afternoon. Doctor. Paul examined the evidence carefully and was impressed with the quantity and quality of the material. "Mrs. Dorothy, with this evidence, we can not only prove your innocence, but also sue for judicial error and seek compensation for the years you spent unjustly imprisoned," explained the lawyer. "How long would this whole process take?" she asked. "For the criminal review, between 6 months and a year. For the compensation, another 1 or 2 years, but I can say up front that the chances of success are very high," said Dr. Paul. "And what about the fees?" "I'll work on a contingency basis. I only get paid if we win the case. This is a very unjust situation, and I want to help you," offered the lawyer. Dorothy accepted the proposal, and Dr. Paul immediately began preparing the petition for criminal review. He recommended that she and Eugene return to St. Benedict Fields and maintain discretion until the process officially began. During the trip back, Dorothy felt a mixture of hope and worry. She finally had evidence of her innocence, but she knew the coming weeks would be dangerous. "Eugene, I need to find my daughter and explain everything to her," said Dorothy. "That's a good idea. She could be an important ally, and she certainly deserves to know the truth about what happened to her family," agreed Eugene. Back in St. Benedict Fields, Dorothy went to Mrs. Patricia's house again. This time, the reception was a bit warmer. "Dorothy, you look different. More hopeful," observed Patricia. "It's because I finally discovered the truth about what happened to me. Soon everyone will know that I was innocent," said Dorothy. "That's good, Dorothy. I always hoped this would happen," said Patricia, seeming sincere. Dorothy asked if Patricia had any information on where to find Jennifer. "Your daughter became a successful businesswoman in the capital. She has a consulting company. The name is Jennifer Mitchell Consulting. It should be easy to find online," informed Patricia. The next day, Dorothy used the public library computer to research her daughter's company. She found the address and phone number and decided to make a surprise visit. The trip to the capital again was made with funds borrowed from Eugene. Dorothy was nervous about the reunion after so many years, but determined to rebuild the relationship with Jennifer. Jennifer's company was in a modern commercial building downtown. The receptionist informed her that she was in a meeting, but Dorothy insisted, saying it was an urgent personal matter. When Jennifer appeared in the reception area, Dorothy hardly recognized her. At 48, Jennifer was an elegant, well-dressed woman who looked like she had achieved professional success, but when she saw her mother, her expression hardened. "What are you doing here?" asked Jennifer, showing no affection. "Jennifer, I need to talk to you." It's about your imprisonment, about your father, about many things you don't know, said Dorothy. I have nothing to say to you. You destroyed our family and shamed our name, replied Jennifer, turning her back. Jennifer, please listen to me. I found evidence that I was innocent. Your father was murdered for trying to help me. Dorothy followed her daughter. Jennifer stopped and turned slowly. What are you talking about? Daddy had a heart attack, she said, confused. No, Jennifer. He was poisoned by people who wanted to hide the truth. I have proof of everything. Dorothy took some photographs from her bag. Jennifer looked at the evidence with skepticism, but Dorothy perceived she had piqued her curiosity. Let's talk in my office, Jennifer said finally. In Jennifer's private office, Dorothy told the whole story. Robert's letter, the meeting with Eugene, the evidence found in the safe, the money laundering scheme. Jennifer listened in silence, her expressions alternating between surprise, anger, and sadness. Why did you never come to me in prison to tell me these suspicions? Asked Dorothy. Because I believed the version they told me. They said you had confessed, that you were remorseful, that you didn't want me to visit out of shame, replied Jennifer, with tears in her eyes. Who told you that? Dr. Albert Henderson, the judge. He was very kind to me after your conviction. He said he would make sure I was taken care of, that he had a fund for children of criminals, explained Jennifer. Dorothy felt anger realizing how Jennifer had been manipulated. The corrupt judge himself had taken advantage of a vulnerable 20-year-old to ensure she wouldn't investigate her mother's situation. Jennifer, Dr. Albert Henderson was involved in the crime. He helped frame me to protect the real culprits, explained Dorothy. That can't be true. He helped me so much. He paid for my college. He gave me the company's first clients. Jennifer seemed in shock. What do you mean? Dorothy became alert. Dr. Albert became like a father to me. After Dad died, he took care of everything. He sold the furniture from the house, paid off the debts, invested the money for my education, recounted Jennifer. Dorothy understood that Dr. Albert Henderson had used Jennifer as a way to control any possible future investigation. By keeping her close and financially dependent, he ensured she would never question the official version of events. Jennifer, you need to understand. Everything he did was to protect himself, not to help you. He was paying for the guilt of having destroyed our family, explained Dorothy. Jennifer remained silent for several minutes, processing the information. Mom, I'm so sorry. All these years I believed you had abandoned me out of shame for what you did, she said, finally calling Dorothy Mom. My daughter, I would never abandon you. Every day in prison I thought of you, hoping that one day we could meet again, said Dorothy, hugging Jennifer for the first time in almost 30 years. The reunion was emotional, but also painful. They had a lot of lost time to recover and many wounds to heal. Mom, I will help you with whatever is necessary. I have financial resources, contacts. I will do whatever it takes to clear your name, promised Jennifer. Thank you, my daughter. But it's very dangerous. The people involved are still powerful and may try to harm us, warned Dorothy. I don't care about the danger. I lost you for 28 years because of lies. Now I will fight for the truth, said Jennifer with determination. In the following days, Jennifer used her resources and contacts to speed up the criminal review process. She hired private investigators to gather more evidence and locate witnesses who could corroborate Dorothy's version. Through the investigators, they discovered that Dr. Charles Bradford, the former bank director, was still alive and living in a nearby town. After a long silence, he agreed to make a statement in exchange for protection guarantees. Dr. Charles confessed that he was coerced into participating in the scheme by Harold Thompson and Dr. Albert Henderson. He revealed details of how the operation worked and how Dorothy was chosen as the scapegoat. They chose Dorothy because she was an exemplary employee, respected, with no history of problems. It would be hard for anyone to suspect she was innocent, explained Dr. Charles during the testimony. How did they manage to forge so many of her signatures? Asked the investigator. Harold Thompson had contacts with professional forgers. They obtained samples of Dorothy's signature and reproduced them perfectly, revealed Dr. Charles. With Dr. Charles's testimony and the evidence gathered by Robert and Eugene, the criminal review process began to move quickly. Paul Henry Carter was confident in the outcome. While awaiting the trial, Dorothy and Jennifer spent weeks talking, getting to know each other again, and rebuilding their relationship. Jennifer told her about her life, her relationships, her professional projects. Dorothy spoke about the years in prison, the friends she made, the difficulties she faced. "Mom, I have a confession to make," said Jennifer during a lunch. "You can tell me, my daughter." "I always doubted your guilt. Even as a child, I knew you weren't capable of the things they accused you of, but it was easier to accept the official version than to fight against it," admitted Jennifer. "Why was it easier?" "Because Dr. Albert offered me a comfortable life, education, opportunities. If I questioned his version, I could lose all of that," explained Jennifer, ashamed. "Jennifer, you were very young, alone, and scared. Don't blame yourself for the choices you made to survive," said Dorothy with understanding. "But now I understand the price of that comfort was too high. I lost 28 years with you," said Jennifer with tears. 3 months after the process began, the court decided on Dorothy's criminal review. Her conviction was overturned, and she was officially declared innocent of all charges. The news reverberated through St. Benedict Fields and neighboring towns. Many people who had judged Dorothy came to apologize. Patricia was one of the first. "Dorothy, forgive me for doubting you. I should have supported you from the beginning," said Patricia, emotional. "Patricia, you helped me when I needed a roof over my head. That was very important to me," replied Dorothy, without resentment. Dr. Albert Henderson was arrested and prosecuted for corruption and fraud. Harold Thompson had passed away, but his family was forced to return illicitly obtained funds. Dr. Charles Bradford received a reduced sentence for cooperating with justice. The compensation process for judicial error resulted in an award of $2 million for Dorothy. With that money, she decided to recover the rural property that was being auctioned. "Mom, are you sure you want to go back there? It holds many painful memories," asked Jennifer. "Jennifer, that land represents my history with your father. I want to turn the painful memories into something positive," explained Dorothy. With Jennifer's help, Dorothy completely renovated the farmhouse. On the site of the old barn, they built a memorial garden in honor of Robert. Eugene Parker became a close friend of the family. With the compensation money, Dorothy paid off Eugene's medical debts and ensured he had a comfortable old age. "Eugene, thank you for keeping Robert's secrets all these years. Without your courage, I would never have discovered the truth," said Dorothy. "Dorothy, it was the least I could do. Robert was a very brave man, and you deserve to have your name cleared," replied Eugene. Linda, the former bank employee who helped Dorothy, was promoted to regional manager of the new banking institution. She became an advocate for ethical practices in the financial sector. Dorothy's story inspired other people living in similar situations. She began receiving letters from prisoners claiming innocence, asking for advice on how to fight for justice. Dorothy decided to create a non-governmental organization to help people who had been wrongfully convicted. With her experience and resources, she could make a difference in the lives of other families destroyed by judicial errors. "Mom, your suffering was not in vain. Now you can help other people going through the same situation," said Jennifer. "It's true, my daughter. If my story can prevent other families from suffering what we suffered, then it's worth fighting for," replied Dorothy. The organization grew quickly, with support from volunteer lawyers, investigators, and human rights activists. Within 2 years, they secured the review of 15 cases similar to Dorothy's. Dr. Paul Henry Carter became the lead attorney for the organization, working full-time on social justice causes. "Mrs. Dorothy, your case changed my perspective on law. Now I understand that our role goes far beyond making money," said Dr. Paul. "Dr. Paul, we all have a mission in this life. Yours is to use your knowledge to defend the innocent," replied Dorothy. Jennifer sold part of her company and moved to St. Benedict Fields to be closer to her mother. Together they managed the organization and took care of the rural property. "Mum, I never thought I'd be so happy living in the countryside again," said Jennifer. "Happiness isn't in the place we live, but in the people we love," replied Dorothy wisely. On the 3rd anniversary of her release, Dorothy organized a party at the rural property. She invited everyone who had helped her during her fight for justice: Eugene, Linda, Dr. Paul, Patricia, and dozens of others. Friends, today we celebrate not only my innocence, but the victory of truth over injustice. Each one of you was important on this journey, Dorothy said in a speech. During the party, a young journalist approached Dorothy. Mrs. Dorothy, I would like to write a book about your story. I believe it can inspire many people, proposed the journalist. It would be an honor, my dear. If my story can give hope to those fighting for justice, then it should be told, Dorothy accepted. The book, after 28 years of fight for truth, became a national success. The royalties were donated in full to Dorothy's organization. Jennifer married at 50 to a lawyer she met through her work at the organization. The wedding was held at the rural property, with Dorothy proudly walking her daughter down the aisle. Mum, thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to start over, Jennifer said on her wedding day. My daughter, love always finds a way to blossom, even after the greatest storms, replied Dorothy, moved. Eugene, at 75, married Mrs. Patricia, who had recently been widowed. The couple decided to live in Eugene's house, but spent weekends at Dorothy's property. Dorothy, who would have thought our friendship born in adversity would turn into a big family, said Patricia. Patricia, the best friendships are forged in difficult times, replied Dorothy. Dr. Albert Henderson died in prison 2 years after his conviction. Before dying, he wrote a letter asking Dorothy for forgiveness and revealing the name of the 5th person involved in the criminal scheme. The 5th person was a businessman from another state who coordinated similar operations in various regions of the country. With this information, the federal police managed to dismantle the entire criminal network. Mum, finally all the guilty have been punished. Daddy can rest in peace, said Jennifer. My daughter, justice may be slow, but it always prevails when we fight for it, replied Dorothy. Dorothy created a memorial at the rural property in honor of all victims of judicial errors. The memorial included a garden with plaques bearing the names of people who had been wrongfully convicted. This place is to remind us that the fight for justice never ends, Dorothy explained to visitors. The organization founded by Dorothy expanded to other states, creating a national network of support for victims of judicial errors. Universities began to study her methods and apply them in their legal clinics. At 75, Dorothy received an honorary doctorate from a federal university in recognition of her contribution to social justice. Mrs. Dorothy, you have transformed your personal pain into an instrument of justice for all of society, said the Dean during the ceremony. Mr. Dean, I learned that suffering only has meaning when it teaches us to help other people, Dorothy replied. Jennifer assumed the presidency of the organization when Dorothy decided to retire at 78. The transition was smooth, as Jennifer had learned all of her mother's values and methods. Mother, I promise to continue your work with the same dedication and love, Jennifer promised. My daughter, you have already exceeded my expectations. The organization is in excellent hands, said Dorothy, proudly. During her last active years, Dorothy wrote several letters to young people facing difficulties, always conveying messages of hope and perseverance. My dear, remember that life may knock us down many times, but our strength lies in our ability to get up and keep walking. Never give up fighting for what is right. Dorothy also corresponded with dozens of people she had helped over the years. Each thank you letter she received was a reminder that her fight was worth it. One autumn afternoon, at 80 years old, Dorothy was sitting on the porch of the country house, looking at the memorial garden she had created. Jennifer approached with a cup of tea. Mother, what are you thinking about? Asked Jennifer. I'm thinking about your father, about how proud he would be to see all that we've built. I'm thinking about all the people we've helped and how surprising life can be, replied Dorothy. Do you have any regrets? The only regret I have is not discovering sooner that true happiness comes from helping others. I had to go through so much suffering to learn that lesson, said Dorothy, smiling. That night, Dorothy wrote in her diary, Today marks 20 years of freedom and 52 years since I met Robert. Looking back, I see that every difficult moment was necessary to transform me into the person I am today. If I could choose a different life, a life without pain and without struggle, I would not choose it, because it was through adversity that I discovered my true strength and my life's purpose. Dear listener, if you are enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It helps us a lot as we are just starting out. now continuing. The following year, Dorothy decided to write a series of letters for future generations, explaining the lessons she learned during her journey. To whoever reads these words one day, life is not about avoiding difficulties, but about how we react to them. Every person you help, every act of kindness you perform, every moment you choose love over hate, you will be contributing to a better world. The country property was transformed into a retreat center for families facing crises within the justice system. Dorothy offered shelter, guidance, and hope to desperate people. "Mrs. Dorothy, how do you manage to keep so much faith after everything you've been through?" asked a visitor. "My dear, faith does not mean we will not suffer. Faith means we believe our suffering can have a greater purpose," replied Dorothy. At 82, Dorothy began to feel her mission was coming to an end. Her body was frail, but her mind remained lucid and her spirit indomitable. "Jennifer, I want you to know I am so proud of the woman you've become. You took our pain and turned it into an instrument of healing for others," said Dorothy. "Mother, everything I am I learned from you. Your strength inspired me to never give up," replied Jennifer, holding her mother's hand. Dorothy decided to organize one last large gathering at the rural property. She invited all the people she had helped over the years, all the organization's employees, friends, and family. "My friends, I've gathered you here today to celebrate our journey together. Each of you played a part in transforming a personal injustice into a movement of hope for thousands of people," Dorothy addressed the crowd. During the meeting, the results of the organization's 20 years of work were presented. Over 200 successful criminal case reviews, thousands of families assisted, dozens of changes in legislation to protect defendants' rights. "Mrs. Dorothy, you have created a legacy that will last for generations," said Dr. Paul. "Dr. Paul, the true legacy isn't in the numbers, but in the transformed lives. Every family that was able to reunite, every person who regained their dignity, every child who smiled again," replied Dorothy. That night, after all the guests had left, Dorothy walked alone to the memorial garden. There was the plaque in honor of Robert, with his photo and the words, "A courageous man who gave his life for the truth. Robert, my love, we did it. The truth prevailed, our daughter became a wonderful woman, and our pain turned into strength to help others. I hope you are proud," whispered Dorothy. A gentle breeze swayed the garden flowers, as if it were a tender response. In the following months, Dorothy gradually reduced her activities, spending more time in contemplation and reflection. She liked to sit on the porch and observe the movement of nature. "Mother, may I bring some people to visit you? They are families who would like to thank you in person," asked Jennifer. "Of course, my daughter. Receiving these visits brings me great joy," replied Dorothy. The visits became almost daily. People came from various parts of the country to give thanks and share their stories of overcoming. Dorothy listened to each account with attention and affection. "Mrs. Dorothy, because of you, my husband was exonerated and our family was reunited," said one visitor with tears in her eyes. "My dear, I merely lit a candle. It was you who had the courage to follow the light," replied Dorothy. On an especially quiet afternoon, Dorothy received a visit from a young lawyer just starting her career. "Mrs. Dorothy, I want to work in social justice, but sometimes I feel discouraged by so much corruption and injustice. How do I keep hope?" asked the young woman. "My dear, the darkness always seems stronger when we are lost in it, but just a small light is enough to illuminate the path. Be that light for someone," advised Dorothy. "And what if I fail? What if I can't help?" "The only real failure is to stop trying. Every attempt, even if not successful, plants seeds that may one day blossom," said Dorothy with wisdom. The young lawyer left the visit transformed and would later become one of the country's leading human rights advocates. During the winter of that year, Dorothy caught a flu that turned into pneumonia. Jennifer took her to the city hospital, where she was admitted for a few weeks. "Mother, the doctors say you need rest. Let's suspend the visits for a while," said Jennifer, worried. "Jennifer, promise me you won't interrupt the organization's work because of me." "The people who need help can't wait," Dorothy requested. "I promise, Mom, but right now the priority is your recovery," Jennifer replied. During the hospitalization, Dorothy received hundreds of cards, flowers, and affectionate messages from people across the country. The hospital nurse was impressed by the amount of affection shown. "Mrs. Dorothy, I've never seen a patient receive so much love. You must have touched many lives," commented the nurse. "My dear, when we plant love, we harvest gratitude. It's one of life's most beautiful laws," Dorothy replied. After 3 weeks, Dorothy was discharged and returned to the farm. Her health was fragile, but her spirit remained strong. "Mom, how about we hire a nurse to take care of you?" suggested Jennifer. "No need, my daughter. I have you. I have our friends. I have nature all around me. It's all I need to be happy," said Dorothy. Dorothy spent the spring writing her final memoirs, recording reflections on forgiveness, hope, and the meaning of life. "I learned that forgiveness is not a gift we give to others, but to ourselves. When we forgive, we free ourselves from the weight of resentment and make room for inner peace. Hope is not the belief that everything will turn out fine, but the certainty that our life has meaning, regardless of the outcome. The meaning of life is not in what we receive, but in what we give. Every act of kindness echoes in eternity." The following summer, Dorothy turned 83. The birthday celebration was simple, with only close family and intimate friends. She made a special request that instead of gifts, people make donations to the organization. "Mum, what do you wish for this new year of life?" Jennifer asked during the party. "I wish to see you happy, to see our organization grow, and to have time to appreciate every sunset." "They are simple wishes, but they fill my heart with joy," Dorothy replied. During the autumn, Dorothy began organizing her personal papers and deciding the fate of her belongings. She wanted to make sure everything would be in order for Jennifer. "Mum, you don't need to worry about these things now," said Jennifer. "My daughter organizing our departure is an act of love for those who stay. I want to make things easier for you," Dorothy explained. Dorothy donated most of her clothes and personal items to families in need. She kept only the most meaningful things: family photographs, Robert's letter, some favorite books. On a December afternoon, Dorothy was sitting in her favorite armchair on the porch when Jennifer arrived from work. "Mum, how was your day?" "It was a perfect day, my daughter. I received letters from 3 people who were exonerated this month. I contemplated the memorial garden blooming beautifully, and now I get to talk with you." "What more could I ask for?" Dorothy replied, smiling. "You always find reasons to be grateful," observed Jennifer. "Jennifer, gratitude is a choice we make every day. We can focus on what we lack or celebrate what we have. I choose to celebrate," said Dorothy. That night, Dorothy wrote a final letter to Jennifer. "My dear daughter, if you are reading this letter, it means my journey in this world has come to an end. Do not be sad. I lived a full life, full of meaning and purpose. I transformed my pain into strength to help other people, and that gave me a happiness I never imagined possible. Continue our work, but also remember to live your own life with joy. You are my greatest achievement and my greatest pride. I love you infinitely, Mum." In the early hours of the next morning, Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep, with a serene smile on her face. The wake and funeral of Dorothy were moments celebrating an extraordinary life. Hundreds of people came from across the country to pay their respects. These were not tears of sadness, but of gratitude for everything she represented. Jennifer, even in the pain of farewell, found the strength to speak during the ceremony. "My mother always said it's not about how long we live, but how we live. She lived 83 years with purpose, love, and dedication to others. Her legacy is not in personal achievements, but in the lives she transformed. Every person here is proof that a life lived with love can change the world." Dr. Paul also paid his respects. "Mrs. Dorothy taught us that justice is not just a legal matter, but a moral imperative. She transformed her own injustice into fuel to fight for everyone's justice. Her life was a lesson in how to convert suffering into service." Eugene, at 80 years old, spoke on behalf of the oldest friends. Dorothy was an ordinary woman who went through an extraordinary situation and chose to react heroically. She could have become bitter and resentful, but she chose the path of love and dedication to others. This is how she should be remembered, as an everyday heroine. After the funeral, Dorothy was buried next to Robert in the cemetery of St. Benedict Fields. On the headstone, Jennifer had engraved the words that summarized her mother's life philosophy. She turned pain into love, injustice into hope, suffering into service. The organization created by Dorothy remains active under Jennifer's leadership, now expanded to 8 American states. The retreat center on the rural property annually hosts over 1,000 families seeking guidance and support. The house where Dorothy lived has been turned into a museum open to the public, where visitors can learn her story and be inspired by her journey of overcoming. The Memorial Garden has become a pilgrimage site for people fighting for justice, where they leave flowers and renew their hopes. Dorothy's memoir has become required reading in law courses at several American universities. A foundation was created in her name to offer scholarships to low-income youth who wish to study law. Jennifer remarried at 55 and adopted 2 orphaned children. She always tells them about the grandmother they never met. Grandma Dorothy believed that every person has the power to make a difference in the world. You carry that legacy and that responsibility. 10 years after Dorothy's death, Jennifer organized a special ceremony at the rural property. A rural school named after Dorothy Mitchell was inaugurated, intended to educate underprivileged children in the region. Mother always said that education is the surest path to transform lives. This school is our way of continuing her mission, said Jennifer during the inauguration. The school grew and became a benchmark in rural education, receiving visits from educators from various parts of the country interested in learning its methods. 15 years after her death, a miniseries about Dorothy's life was produced and aired on national television. The story moved millions of viewers and inspired new callings to social advocacy. Jennifer, now 63, continues to run the organization with the same dedication as her mother. She has developed new projects, including a psychological support program for families of prisoners. Mother always said it's not enough to fight for legal innocence. We must care for the emotional wounds that injustice causes, Jennifer explains to new volunteers. The rural property has expanded and now also houses a research center on judicial errors, funded by American and international universities. 20 years after Dorothy's death, the United States passed a national law protecting victims of judicial errors, known as the Dorothy Mitchell Act. The law establishes stricter procedures for criminal reviews and guarantees comprehensive assistance to people who have been wrongfully convicted. During the signing of the law, the President of the United States mentioned, "This law is a tribute to an extraordinary woman who transformed her own injustice into a fight for justice for all." Dorothy Mitchell taught us that the truth always prevails when we have the courage to fight for it. Jennifer was present at the ceremony, representing her mother's memory. "My mother always said her greatest victory would not be her own exoneration, but the creation of mechanisms to protect other people from injustice." Today, 20 years later, that victory is realized. The story of Dorothy Mitchell became a symbol of resistance and hope, not only in the United States, but in several countries facing similar problems in their judicial systems. An international human rights organization created the Dorothy Mitchell Award to recognize people fighting against judicial errors worldwide. Jennifer regularly travels to other countries, sharing the American experience and learning from similar initiatives. Mother always believed that the fight for justice knows no borders. Wherever there is a person wrongfully accused, our solidarity must be there, explains Jennifer during her international lectures. The rural property was transformed into an international reference center, receiving visitors from dozens of countries interested in learning about the American model of assistance for victims of judicial errors. Today, 30 years after the beginning of her fight for justice, the story of Dorothy Mitchell continues to inspire new generations of lawyers, activists, and ordinary people who believe in the power of individual transformation. At the rural school that bears her name, children learn from an early age about the importance of truth, justice, and perseverance. One of them, the granddaughter of a man who was exonerated thanks to the work of Dorothy's organization, always says, "When I grow up, I want to be just like Mrs. Dorothy. I want to help people who are suffering injustices." The teacher always responds, "You can be like her by being an honest, courageous person, always willing to help others." Those qualities don't depend on a profession, but on character. End of story. Now tell us what you thought of the story and where you are watching from. If you have something to share with us, leave it in the comments with sincere words. Do you believe Dorothy made the right decisions? We love reading your opinion. Thank you so much for your company. Don't forget to leave your like and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other moving stories.